Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're jumping into 5 really powerful chapters from the Book of Psalms. And look, this isn't just some ancient poetry. It's actually a surprisingly practical, timeless playbook for navigating the kinds of crises we all face, from our own personal failures to the absolute gut punch of betrayal. So, here's our game plan. We're going to journey through these 5 Psalms one by one. And what you'll see is this incredible emotional arc. It starts with a crisis inside the soul and then moves outward to face things like deceit and abandonment. We're going to see what each one has to teach us. Okay, let's get started.
All right, first up, let's just set the stage a little. Why do these ancient poems still hit so hard today? Well, because they aren't just religious hymns. Think of them more like a playbook for the human condition, for when everything just falls apart.
I mean, that's the fundamental question these Psalms tackle head on. And they don't shy away from the really ugly parts of life, you know? We're talking about deep, personal sin, facing powerful enemies, watching society just kind of decay, and of course that uniquely sharp pain of being betrayed.
So you really have to think of this as one continuous journey, not just 5 separate chapters. It's this powerful story that starts inside the human heart and then expands outward to face a pretty hostile world. And our first stop is the most personal crisis of all, repentance, which we find in Psalm 51. Okay, so Psalm 51, wow. This is hands down one of the most profound and vulnerable prayers of repentance ever written. And what's wild is that it doesn't just come out of nowhere. It's born from a very specific and very high-stakes historical crisis.
Yeah, this is not a theoretical poem. According to the text, this is a gut-wrenching plea straight from King David, a leader who failed, and I mean profoundly failed, through adultery and murder. He's hit absolute rock bottom, and he's not making excuses. He's just begging for mercy.
And you have to notice what he's asking for here. This is so key. He's not just saying, hey, can you wipe the slate clean? It's so much deeper. He's crying out to be fundamentally changed from the inside out. It's basically a plea for a spiritual heart transplant. He's asking for a pure heart and a steady spirit, because he knows that only a divine intervention can fix what's so deeply broken inside of him. So this psalm gives us a really clear 4-step model for what genuine repentance even looks like. It all starts with just unflinching acknowledgement of what you did, no sugarcoating. From there, it moves to a plea for mercy. Then a deep desire for a cleansing that only God can do, and finally, this hope for total inner transformation. Not just to feel better, but to get that fellowship with God back. Okay, now we're going to shift gears. We go from an internal crisis to an external one. The focus moves away from the psalmist's own failure to confronting the arrogance of this powerful, deceitful person who, well, seems to be getting away with everything.
And the psalm just brilliantly illustrates this conflict by painting 2 completely opposite portraits. On one side, you have the wicked man. He trusts in his power, his wealth. But on the other side, you have the righteous person, who's pictured as a flourishing green olive tree. It's such a great image, right? It's a symbol of stability, of life, of being firmly planted and just trusting in God's mercy. So here's the crucial point. The psalmist's response to this arrogant enemy isn't to take matters into his own hands. His hope isn't in his own strength at all. It's in this firm belief in ultimate divine justice. This idea that God's character ensures that in the end, wickedness will be uprooted and good will win out. All right, so we went from the problem of a single evil person. Now, the focus widens dramatically. Psalm 53 basically zooms the camera all the way out to diagnose the problem of an entire society that has, well, completely lost its way.
This famous opening verse, it sets a pretty bleak tone. The full here isn't talking about someone who lacks intelligence. It means someone who has a kind of moral and spiritual blindness, who just lives as if there's no divine accountability. And the psalmist argues that this practical atheism is the real root of all the societal corruption.
So yeah, this psalm paints a really sweeping, kind of grim picture of a society in spiritual crisis. It describes this universal corruption that all starts with ignoring God, and it voices this deep, desperate longing for salvation, for God to just step in and deliver his people from this broken mess.
So after that big, wide-angle view of a corrupt society, the focus narrows sharply. We zoom right back into a direct, personal threat. We're talking betrayal and immediate danger. The crisis is right here, right now.
The context for this psalm is just pure desperation. David's on the run, his location has been betrayed to his enemies, and his life is in serious danger. So his response isn't some deep theological essay. It's a direct, urgent appeal for help, like a 911 call.
And yet, right in the middle of all that terror, the psalm pivots to this incredibly powerful declaration of trust. Now, he's not denying the danger. It's very real. But he's affirming a greater reality, that God is a present helper, a defender, and a righteous judge who is actively sustaining him through the crisis.
And now we arrive at the emotional climax of this entire journey. This is the most intimate, and you could argue the most painful crisis of all. The agony of being betrayed, not by an enemy, but by a close, trusted friend.
First off, the psalm just validates the crushing weight of this experience. It doesn't tell the person to just get over it. It gives voice to the pure horror, the fear, the overwhelming anguish that comes with a wound that deep. It basically says, yeah, this level of grief is a totally valid response.
And this verse, this reveals the source of the deepest pain. The psalmist says, look, if it had been an enemy, I could have handled it. But it wasn't. It was you, a peer, a confidant, a friend. And that's what makes the wound so personal and so devastating. The pain is directly proportional to the trust that was just shattered.
So what do you do with that kind of unbearable pain? Well, here is the Psalm's ultimate counsel. It's an invitation to do something pretty radical, to hand over that crushing weight to God, and to trust that He will sustain you, that He will give you stability even when your world feels like it's completely collapsing.
So, when you step back and look at all 5 of these chapters together, you see this comprehensive guide for navigating life's absolute biggest challenges. It gives you a path that requires honest repentance for your own failures, confident trust in divine justice when you're facing evil, and a firm reliance on God's faithfulness through it all.
Ultimately, this ancient text poses a timeless question to every single one of us. It suggests a path forward that's built on brutal honesty about our own hearts and a broken world, combined with a radical reliance on something beyond ourselves. And it leaves us with a critical question to think about. What is our anchor when the storm hits? Thanks for joining this explainer.